So I've got a pretty basic gray and white slideshow today just to go over some things regarding microcredentials because I'm the program manager here at Oswego. I think I know everyone that signed up, but just in case, Karen Archibee, I'm over in extended learning. We've been continuing our work to progress microcredentials in different areas and get the word out, increase our productivity in terms of the process in which our faculty go through and our staff go through when getting these microcredentials approved. And so I wanted to talk today more about like brainstorming kind of ideas for you to consider, things to think about also in the non-credit space, because that is something that we are wanting to lean more into. We have some things coming down the pipe for the next academic year, more in the academic and credit bearing space, and that's great. But with cost and longevity and time, we really want to start looking at more non-credit offerings that we can offer to local businesses, to alumni, that can be completed faster and with less money, essentially. So I wanted to talk about some of those key areas. So just a refresher on what microcredentials are. This is a list of kind of tried and true things that we are trying to focus on with microcredentials. First and foremost, they need to be aligned to industry or postgraduate needs. So they can't be a minor, it can't be a concentration or a subset of courses that every student in a program takes. We really want these to be focused in a skill set area that's really more like of a deep dive and very much a smaller subset of courses. So we really want to be able to focus in one specific area and focus on skills and competencies that are coming down the pipe and that we're hearing about in the workforce area and with needs and things like that. Another piece that we're really focusing on is making sure that everything that we're approving across campus is stackable within degrees. So non-credit is a little bit funny in the sense that we're used to academics here. We're used to credit-bearing classes. They're easy to transcribe. They're very clear for everyone to understand what's involved. The cost is pretty cut and dry. And they're very stackable. We can take a chunk of courses and have them stackable into different programs. Case in point, our digital media and communication design microcredential stacks into our IPS program. And so we're trying to build more of those. And so I'm working on that while also trying to help build more non-credit. Even non-credit can be potentially built into a program as well, because we can take parts and pieces of current classes that are being offered, create a smaller, faster, more intentional piece to those areas, create a non-credit microcredential that can be offered, and then that could eventually be a 1 credit course into some area, or maybe 1 credit of a class. So we're trying to be very creative, and we're trying to see what the higher ed community is doing across the country in these spaces. For our current students, it's a great motivator to help them stay consistent with their courses, to build up their portfolios and their resumes, because it does allow a transcribed piece on their registration and their transcript, but it also provides them a digital badge that we work with Credly, campus partner, and I work with them to get them those digital badges. So you'll see the rest of them there. The biggest part is that this should all align with industry needs, and it should be able to kind of catapult folks into a new space, whether it's in their current employment status or it should make them employable. So things to consider when you're hearing about microcredentials or you have an idea of one is, who are you trying to serve? Do you want to serve current students? Do you want to serve alumni? Do you want to serve a certain community, a certain business partner? If there's an area that there's a gap in our community that you're aware of, that you feel like your knowledge base could bring something great to that space, that's something that we want to look at. What to consider. So what are you thinking about putting together? How long would it take? What are the key pieces that you think students need to take away in terms of learning outcomes? So that's a big part of it, is what exactly are you trying to do with a microcredential and what are you trying to teach? How do you want to give out this information? What modality? Do you want it to be online, asynchronous? Do you want it to be in person? Do you want it here on the main campus or maybe at the Syracuse campus? Would it be a one Saturday every month for a few months? Would it be a meeting that you'd have at the industry partners' offices to teach their folks there? So there's many ways we can get out this information, share the knowledge that our folks have across campus, but we need to kind of knock that out ahead of time so we know how we're actually going to do this. And then why? Why do you want to do the microcredential? Why should the microcredential exist? Essentially, so what? That big question of, will this impact the industry? Is the industry saying that they need this and that they want this? And then we're also trying to remember all these things while remembering who we are at SUNY Oswego. So we're focusing on areas that we are tried and true in and focus in spaces that we know we can help, and we've helped lots and lots of people. So we're not trying to do things like Skill does or like Cortland. We're really wanting to focus on what we do here and what we're really good at and what we can build on with that. So more things to consider. NACE competencies is a big one. Everything we try to do with the microcredentials, we want to see them aligned to the NACE competencies. So career services folks know a ton about these. A lot of the NACE competencies are even being implemented into courses and into syllabus so that we know that our students are graduating and meeting these competencies that are needed by employers. So we're really trying to make sure that these pieces align as well. So you can look nationally, you can look internationally of different needs, but we really are looking too at the local needs in our local community, whether it's Oswego, Syracuse, the contiguous counties, just looking in to see what we can do and how can we help the folks that are right in our backyard. And then in turn, maybe help them enroll. If they are interested in doing a couple micro-credentials, those stack into a program, they come back, they get their bachelor's. So that's really a kind of a focus there too, is how we can help people that are right here. Industry needs is a big one. Like I've said, knowing and hearing what's going on and what's changing out there is a big piece. I know a lot of folks across campus have different networks they're part of, associations. So if those conversations are kind of drumming up new ideas, that's a great way to start. Alumni, we hear a lot from alumni about what they wish they had or what could be really helpful or what they'd love to learn more about now that they've graduated. How long would it take to create the microcredential? So, really just looking at space and time and how long it would be to put everything together. And I'll talk more about that with the different types of microcredentials. And then who can you partner with? So we really want it to be an interdisciplinary approach. We want it to be collaborative. If you can find another person in another department that may be offering some insight, or academically wise, if two different departments host a microcredential, that's really great. If you look at our microcredential page as it stands now, you'll see the courses are listed for each one, and you'll see that our newest cannabis studies microcredential, that is a new chemistry and criminal justice. Digital media is communication media and the arts, and broadcasting or communication. So we do try to make sure that we're kind of tapping into these different spaces across campus so that people can really get the whole rounded approach. So I've talked a little bit about credit versus non-credit, and just to be clear on what things are, credit is really focused on those credit courses that we offer to our students, both matriculated and non-matriculated. It'll work well for our current matriculated students, of course, and that's a great thing, again, to have things be stackable with them. You can use courses that already exist. I'm currently looking at courses that already exist that are especially in integrated professional studies, which I advise for, and seeing what we can put together to make a great micro-credential. So you can use that, or you can create new ones. Folks have done that as well, but that takes a little bit longer because that has to go through approval process and then get stood up, and then we can launch the micro-credential. Courses should embed into a major, I think I meant to write major or minor. And then cost is based on credit hours, as we know. So people looking to come back and take a micro-credential non-matriculated are still going to be paying for that 3-credit course at that 3-credit cost. So that does add up pretty quick, and students can pay a few $1,000s to take 4 classes for a micro-credential. And there's no financial aid available currently for a non-matriculated part-time, student in that capacity. So that's really one area where I'm hoping people will start to consider maybe non-credit options because of the fact that they're usually shorter in duration for those working adults. Cost is dependent on the curriculum. So depending on what you're building, we can estimate that cost. And so my dean, Jill Pippin, is always working on working on those formulations of what things should cost and what we should be paying our facilitators. So that's a whole nother conversation that I'm happy to chat with you about and get you in touch with Jill. If that does become the case where you're working on something non-credit, you wouldn't be offering during, typical class credit time, we can talk more about that. But really the non-credit piece is great for focusing on specific businesses, specific industries, working with a business partner. If you know someone that works somewhere and they're telling you that they have this need, if we can work with them directly, we can build it for them and then teach them at their accord and kind of in the way they need. So again, whether it's online or in person. So again, with credit, the approval process is also longer. So it's great because once it's stood up, it's pretty accessible semester after semester. However, it does take a little bit longer because FA has to be in session in order for us to get anything approved. We can work on getting things approved as we go, but it won't really get too far until we can put it across the desk at faculty assembly. We do work in Curriculog with most of these micro-credentials, and so that does help the process and it moves things along a little quicker than before, but still, we're still tied to the academic calendar with that approval process. Credit bearing and non-credit, you still need 3 testimonials unless I've found that if there's a state grant or if there's a bigger entity that's requesting this type of work, that usually will stand for a testimonial. So we don't, maybe 2 in the grant documentation would work. So there's some flexibility there. And then we like to see both of these credit or non-credit be interdisciplinary, that's for sure. And even if a non-credit micro-credential comes through, it still lives in one of the colleges. So we have a contract non-credit micro-credential that lives in the School of Education. And so it still will live in an academic house. It isn't just out there floating, but it's a little bit of a different process than credit-bearing micro-credentials. And we can do that over the summer, which is a little bit different than the credit ones. So if you're interested in talking more about non-credit work, and credit as well, but again, non-credit is really where we want to start helping people do some more brainstorming. I'm the #1 first person. Just because we meet doesn't mean it'll be approved, but at least we can get the ball rolling and see what your chairs think, your deans think, colleagues, and kind of get those balls rolling to make sure the documentation is started correctly. If you have an industry partner, if we want to get on a call together and chat about what they're looking for, we can help you build that. Building curriculum from knowledge and experience, that's a big thing. We'll always talk about the modality, of course, and then I'll share with you the approval process, the forms you have to complete, and then what we do after, which is a whole launch process in terms of building the badge with marketing communication, getting a website up. Tim usually helps me with that, getting the badge built in Credly with the portfolio pieces that come from the approval forms that we work with. So there's a whole process, and so we work on those together. So to wrap up, collaboration is definitely key. The biggest thing is connecting with me. In Curriculog, especially now, we will be flagged on the approval process. We've seen some micro-credentials get through before without our knowledge, which is, it happens. There's growing pains, and Rome wasn't built overnight, but we do really want to know what's going on out there when it comes to micro-credentials. So if I know from the get-go, it's much easier to work through that. But first we connect, and then of course the approvals. Chairs and deans definitely need to be aware of what you're considering. There's nothing worse than the paperwork getting to them and them saying, what is this? So we want to make sure everyone's in the same boat and knowing what's going to be happening, and that will just expedite the process. And then the delivering piece is a big one where I collaborate a ton with the faculty and staff that I work with when these launch, because we're communicating back and forth constantly about what things look like. What do you think? How's the badge look? What do you want registration to look like? Are there prerequisites that you need? Then we work with SUNY site as well. So the SUNY folks in Albany, we talk about what we need to put on their website. So there's quite a few steps to the process to make sure we can launch it and get students in those seats. And if you were going to be working with a local business and you wanted to create something specifically for them, then that would be a slightly different process as well. And so we wouldn't have to worry about SUNY or anything like that, but we would still want to make sure we're collaborating on all the right fronts. So I did it in, 15 minutes. Does anyone have any questions? I know I threw a lot out, but
Yeah, Karen, Jessica Harris, Health Promotion and Wellness. I was just wondering, so you mentioned like even doing those non-credits, it could be like in the summer or like working with an industry. Do we have some currently running like that?
we have contracts. So it's a little bit different in the sense that our Office of Professional Development, which is part of extended learning, they have contracts set up with DSS and OTDA. And so they're running their trainings around the clock and throughout the year. So those are a little bit different, but those were created in the same context, in the same way that we would be creating them here. We have another non-credit one, but it is actually for only current students, the Intercultural Global Competency Microcredential. So that's a little bit different. But yeah, the non-credit piece is really where we're trying to build. When you'll see on the website, we do have a few listed, but because they're ran, even though I help kind of manage things, they're still ran by faculty. So if faculty can't run the microcredential that year or something's changing, then it won't launch. So you won't see as much activity with those. Like Innovation Challenge, I know that's a microcredential non-credit, but it depends on how they run it and if they can offer the microcredential each cycle.
Okay.
So
Okay. Thank you.
yeah. But yeah, non-credit is a little bit finicky and funny because it is different. And I know it's really tough for folks because everyone is really overtaxed as it is. So this is something where, depending on people's performance program and what they do daily in their work, that's one conversation that we have with Jill. But then if this is something you'd be doing outside of your regularly scheduled work hours, you're developing it on the weekends, you're facilitating at certain times, that would obviously be a different payment process. And so that's why I think academics have done really well and the credit-bearing microcredentials have worked well because, the faculty put the classes together, they're running the courses anyways, and then we're just making sure those microcredential students are in there and I'm advising them correctly. But non-credit is a little bit of a different lift. I'd say the biggest one that we've had the most momentum on is Christopher Malik. It was working with the Oswego Police Department for Spanish for first responders. So that is kind of a good example of sort of what he's been working on. So that's been exciting to see. But yeah, so that's my piece this year. I was looking through all my old presentations. We've talked about kind of the introduction to microcredentials and then how we work together and how the process works and then what you need to do to get one going. And now here we are again today to talk about, the non-credit and what things could look like and the ways of brainstorming, or at least thinking about what could be out there that we could work with.
Sounds great. Thank you.
Thank you for coming. And, I can stay on for 2 more minutes and use my time, or we can sign off, whatever everyone thinks. Bye, Michelle.
Any more questions? Okay, well, thank you.
All right. Thank you. See you all later. Have a good day.
You too.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.